南无本师释迦牟尼佛。南无本师释迦牟尼佛。南无本师释迦牟尼佛。So we have started discussing the explanation of the shamatha practice in the northern tradition. And we have learned that this practice is explained by means of the 9 dwellings called Chitta Sthiti or Shinju in shamatha. And this very word Shinju, Chitta Sthiti, is very meaningful. It shows actually that all the objects we have explained of shamatha, and not only shamatha, in this tradition also of vipassana, are actually mental objects. The 5 aggregates and so on, they are also mental objects. We cannot experience the 5 aggregates by the 5 senses. We have to have the concept of the 5 aggregates, then we can experience the 5 aggregates. So finally, in this tradition, all boils down to the mind. And investigating the mind is the supreme yoga. We have explained, first we learn shamatha on the worldly object like the breath, but the aim is to apply what we have learned on the worldly object to the mind itself. Then we can realize the real nature of the mind. The real nature of the mind being emptiness. That's why it can contain all the phenomena. It can lead all the phenomena. This principle actually you will find in all forms of Buddhism. But the Southern Buddhism does not really deny. Even the Yogacara actually does not literally deny, but the existence of the outer reality. What is meant is that the mind by its nature is non-dualistic. And we investigate this non-dualistic nature of the mind. And we can only investigate this non-dualistic nature of the mind when we have the deep experience of shamatha. This is in fact the base for all techniques of meditation in the Northern Buddhism, no matter whether you practice Chan, you practice Ta Yuen Man, Mahamudra, you practice the different techniques for realizing the non-dualistic nature of reality. And the non-dualistic nature of reality we can only realize through the non-dualistic nature of the mind. Now we are also learning the understanding of the breath is very useful, because the breath also has a non-dualistic nature. So you have this principle even in the Agamas. In the Agamas, the Buddha is teaching his son Rahula to be like earth, like water, like the wind, like the fire, like the space, because these, they are, so to say, of non-dualistic nature, therefore they can accept everything. They are attuned to the equal nature, and the equal nature belongs to the highest reality. And the highest reality, where is to be found? In this tradition, in the mind. The mind is, we have explained, is the ultimate object of investigation. By the mind we are defiled, by the mind we are liberated. Actually, the objects are neutral. It is the mind which makes them wholesome or unwholesome. This is very important to understand. So the mind is a leader. Chittena niyate loko, chittena parikasati, chittasa eka dhammasa, sabbe dhamma vasam anvagu. A very wonderful saying in the Samyutta Nikaya. The world is directed, led by the mind. The world is controlled by the mind. All the phenomena are under the sway, in the power of one phenomena, and that is mind. But in order to investigate the mind, we have to stabilize the mind. The non-stable mind cannot investigate. Impossible. Because the non-stable mind even does not see that it is under the rule of the attachments, of resistance, of thinking, sloth, of worries, remorse, fears, doubts. So what will it see? It cannot see things as they really are. So we have to get deep into the experience of the balanced mind. And this experience of the balanced mind is called samadhi. In a way, this Yogacara is the science of samadhi. It is based on the explanation of samadhi, of the state when the mind has been completely balanced and turns to itself. But it cannot do the job unless we have developed the balanced mind, and it is done on a worldly object. This is a tradition. In Buddhism, usually, at least in the traditional Buddhism, we do not start with the training on the balanced mind with the ultimate object. We start with a worldly object. And it has very good reasons. And these reasons, when we understand the Buddhism, becomes much clearer. The ultimate reality, is the ultimate reality because it cannot be object of the clinging, cannot be object of resistance, cannot be object of delusion. Therefore, it is the ultimate reality. So, normally we start training with a worldly object to attain the balanced mind, then applying it to the ultimate reality, which in this tradition is the mind itself. And it is very helpful. So Vasubandhu explains, in fact, and you will find it not only in many, many works of that realizing the consciousness only is realizing the Buddhahood. We do not understand the consciousness only. But we learn it through investigating the mind. So with this perspective, then the training in the 9 steps of shamatha, or 9 dwellings of the mind in shamatha, 9 dwellings of the mind on a mental object, which is, we do not further differentiate. When do we practice shamatha? When we, having seized the object with the senses, we do not further investigate it in terms of its name, in terms of its qualities, in terms of its past, present, and future. In terms of whether it is wholesome or unwholesome, but we make effort to stay with the same object. That's how we purify the object and purify the mind, or sublimate the object, and by means, sublimate the mind by means of the subtle object. And we understand that the subtle object can only belong to the subtle mind, and that there is no object without the sensation. Therefore, sensation means, in Buddhism, the reception of the object. And the reception of the object, the sensation, will be subtle when the object is subtle. And when the sensation is subtle, the mind will become subtle. Because what the mind differentiates is actually the sensation. The worldly mind is completely dominated by that. We differentiate according to what is pleasant, what is unpleasant, and what is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. And we want, of course, the pleasant. We do not want the unpleasant. And with these tendencies, we are very bored with neither pleasant nor unpleasant. So we search desperately for something pleasant to grasp. This is the nature of the samsaric mind. And we can only deal with it effectively when we understand it thoroughly. When we do not understand it, we cannot deal with that. This is also precisely what the Yogacara is teaching, what the Theravada is teaching. Same. In order to purify the mind, we have to understand the mind. If we don't understand the mind, how can we purify it? And to understand the mind, we have to turn to the mind. But we cannot understand the mind unless really our mind is balanced. We can read a lot of theories. It will help. We can contemplate about these theories, but we cannot avoid the practice. And the practice is, the effective practice starts by cultivating this quality of the balanced mind. When the mind is balanced, we can penetrate the reality. In this tradition, the reality of the mind only. And the mind only in this tradition is the royal path to the realization. Because the wisdom and concentration only belong to the mental consciousness. So the gist of meditation is turning to the mental consciousness and make it balanced. When the mental consciousness is balanced, we can use it to investigate. And it becomes perfectly balanced in the 9th stage of shamatha. So the 9 stages to make the mind perfectly balanced. When the mind is perfectly balanced, everything is different. Now, in our training, this perfect balance of the mind, we cannot maintain for a long time. We can achieve it for a while, but these old habits will always come of clinging, which brings the instability to the mind. Excitement. And excitement is the echo of excitement is the thinking mind. So we are fluctuating because we have not mastered this art of shamatha. So rather here, even so we are at the Shravaka Bhumi explaining the how to attain nirvana, still the emphasis is on how to attain the perfection. We have to practice a long, long time. Change our habits to keep mind always in the balance. So we have mentioned in the Abhidhamma explaining actually the suttas, the practice of shamatha is explained by the 8 types of dhyana. To be more precise, 9 types of dhyana, because the upachara samadhi, or proximate samadhi, however you call it, without eating. It's also the practice of samadhi, the practice of shamatha. And unless the mind has the power of this without eating, it will not be able to practice vipassana effectively. It will not experience the momentariness of the five aggregates. When it has turned to the differentiated object. And we have mentioned in this tradition we can turn to the differentiated object even when we have not mastered the shamatha. But in that case, unless we have already attained shamatha, we have attained the prashrabdhi, which is accompaniment of shamatha. The deeper the shamatha, the deeper the prashrabdhi. Deeper the Jing-an, the relaxation and clarity, lightness, peace. So the deeper the shamatha, the deeper this peace. But here, in this tradition, the emphasis is not on getting to the most subtle object, getting to the arupa dhyanas. It is of staying in the perfect balance of the mind. So it is not attainment, it is rather ability for spontaneous balanced attention to the object. When we have it, wherever we apply the mind, whatever technique we may use, there will be clarity. And if we decide to go into the dhyana, the dhyana will be lasting. Otherwise, in our case, if we have not trained in such a way, we go into the dhyana, but it will not be lasting. After some time, we will be disturbed by all kinds of tendencies of mind to sing and to be excited again. Even so, these tendencies will be more subtle in the dhyana. They will be there. So we will be hindered in investigation of the mind. So we will also be hindered in merging with the ultimate reality. Because in this tradition, the mind is the ultimate reality. And the mind is suchness. So all this is also based on the agamas. Only the Buddha has the perfect mastery of the dhyanas. Even no disciple can match with the Buddha in the mastery of the dhyanas, in the mastery of the 8 liberations, and so on. So all these techniques, even so they are not much practiced in the Northern Buddhism, they are very important for the practice of the Bodhisattvas. That's why they are mentioned and discussed by Nagarjuna, by Asanga, but they are somehow neglected by later teachers of Mahayana. So now we have come to the fourth stage, and we have explained that the fourth stage, in a way, is a very decisive stage. It is a stage when the object of our meditation does not become forgotten. The mind does not leave anymore the object of meditation. This is a first important achievement. When we have got this achievement, we can go into the purification of the mind effectively. If we don't have this achievement, the purification of the mind will not be very effective. Why? Because the awareness, very important principle to contemplate, the awareness is based on mindfulness. If we don't have mindfulness, we cannot be aware. And because we cannot be aware, we may have defilements in the mind, and we are even not knowing they are defilements. Therefore, according to the Abhidhamma, only when there is mindfulness we can distinguish between wholesome and unwholesome. If we don't have mindfulness, we cannot do it really. We can only do it when the mindfulness has ripened to the extent that we do not leave the object of our attention, and we are not distracted by other objects. That's why the mindfulness does not mean a one-pointedness on doing like this. The mindfulness means open mind. We are concentrated, the mind does not shake, does not wobble, it stays with very good, strong attention due to stable perception on the object, and is not shaken by other objects. So it does not shake. If it is shaken by other object, it is shaking, and then it becomes a monkey mind. And the monkey mind, according to yoga, according to Buddhism, is the accompaniment of all defilements. All defilements are connected with one or another stronger or weaker form of excitement. Very important to understand. And when we practice shamatha, the opposite of shamatha is excitement. The opposite of vipassana, according to Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, is the opposite of excitement, the sinking mind. When we have shamatha, we do not have excitement. When we have vipassana, we do not have the sinking mind. And now, what is the perfection in shamatha? When we not only don't have the excited mind, but we also do not have the sinking mind. When you are deep in concentration, it is very easy to experience the tendency of the mind to think. When you are differentiating the object, it's very easy to encounter the tendency of mind to get dispersed. So, in order to get this most desirable conditioning of the mind, the perfect balance, the 9th stage of shamatha, to achieve it, we can change the attention from the non-differentiated object to the differentiating object, but still we emphasize the non-differentiated object. Very important to understand. Because with the help of non-differentiated object, we go into the dhyana. The object of the dhyana is a concept. And the concept is non-differentiated. In this tradition, you can even use the concept of the 5 aggregates to go into the dhyana. You can use the concept of dependent origination to go into the dhyana. What means dhyana? Upanidhyana. From the Sanskrit root dhya, which means to think, to contemplate. Upa means near, ni means emphatic. So to contemplate, to think about something very clearly, emphatically, without being disturbed by any other object. Now in the northern tradition, the dhyana is considered as unthinkable object in a way in the southern tradition too, but not so systematically explained. Why? Because we translate the dhyana as meditation, but actually when we speak in English or any European language about meditation, we think that meditation means thinking. But in dhyana there is no need for thinking. Yet the mind is connected to the object, that is thinking. When the mind is connected to the object, that is strictly speaking thinking. We do not necessarily need concepts to think. When we relate to the object and penetrate the object, that is dhyana. And then the object appears very clearly in the mind. Clearly enough so that it cannot be influenced by any other object. That is dhyana. Now the Buddha explains in Dhyana Samyutta, in order to get to the other shore, and the other shore is of course another name for nirvana, for suchness, or however you call the ultimate reality. In order to go to the other shore, you have to learn to swim, to go from this side of the Ganga, especially if you go to the east of India, to go to the other shore of Ganga, you have to be a very good swimmer. And he compares the swimming to the dhyana. The dhyana makes the mind strong. If the mind is strong, it can investigate the ultimate reality. If it is very weak, how can it do the job? So the traditional training in a strong mind is training in the dhyana. In ancient India, it was in a way part of the education. They had to remember the Vedas by heart. How to do it, unless the mind is very strong? So now back to our stages of shamatha. We have attained the fourth stage in which we don't leave the object anymore. This stage is called Chinju. Upastapayati. Upa means near. You never leave the vicinity of the object. There may be fluctuations, and they surely will be there, but you never leave the object. So, the mind can become strong. If the mind is a monkey mind, running here, running there, how will you make it strong? Only when you train not to leave the object of your attention, you can make this mind strong. Nowadays, this training is not emphasized, but the traditional system of education, if you go to Burma, you go to the traditional Tibetan institute, they have to concentrate and learn by heart. And while they are learning by heart, they still hear others learning, but they should not be influenced. Still they repeat, unless they have the very clear picture in the mind. It is also kind of training in concentration. So before they memorize, they pray to Manjushri, recite the Manjushri mantra, Om Rapatsana, then they start learning, reciting with concentrated mind, not influenced by anything else. In Burma, I have a little bit experience of learning. You have to learn by heart. Then the teacher will explain. If you learn Abhidhamma, first you learn by heart the verses, every day few verses of Abhidhammata Sangaha. Then the teacher will explain according to the commentaries. This is a traditional way of learning. It makes the mind very strong. Now, the faculty of faith is very important, and the faculty of faith is connected with the resolution. So in this training, it's very important to cultivate resolution. We have said learning shamatha is also explained in this tradition as removing the thoughts of the mind, which are removed in these 9 stages of shamatha. The first thought is laziness, and the laziness is our nature. We are suffering, according to Buddhism, because of our laziness. And how to start to remove laziness. starting from Shraddha, from faith. When we have faith, we have desire, chanda. When we have desire, we practice vyayama. That's how we go to prashrabdhi. When the prashrabdhi is there, we can practice shamatha and vipassana. When the lightness, clarity is there, shamatha and vipassana will be clear. That means awareness will come. And awareness won't come without mindfulness, we have explained. So, in the fourth stage of shamatha, we are successfully, more or less, engaged in removing the laziness. So the mind can experience clearly the inconvenience of thinking and of excitement. Otherwise the mind will not see clearly, because the monkey mind has not been subdued sufficiently. So we will follow our likings and dislikings and our all kinds of fancy thinking. Here we have it under control. So when we don't leave the object of meditation, our concentration is getting better, then we have left the gross tendency of mind to thinking and to excitement. These are the next faults after laziness. When our mind has a tendency to thinking or to excitement, it is a faulty mind. It is deficient mind. It is a mind unable to investigate its own nature. So we are very clear we have to do something about it. And in this stage, in the fourth stage of shamatha, because we have developed mindfulness, mindfulness means the ability of mind not to shake, not to forget the object of attention. So we experience better concentration. And the concentration is connected with a deep mind. When we are concentrated, the mind becomes deep. And the deep mind is near to the base of the mind. Call it bhavanga in Theravada, or call it alaya. Actually, the objects come from there. And this is very important experience. So, even so we don't lose the object of our attention, the mind has tendency to become slack. In my little experience of teaching meditation for quite few years, I have met meditators who have been meditating 20 years or 30 years, and they come to this stage, you feel very comfortable, but the mind has still quite significant tendency to thinking. When you are staying with a meditation object, you feel very comfortable. You don't suppress anything. The mind, despite the fact it has all kinds of fancies still, all kinds of ideas may crop, but it does not leave the meditation object. All kinds of sensations will come, pleasant, unpleasant. It does not leave the meditation object. It becomes quite stable. But it does not fight against the tendency to think. So it is stable, but the object is not very clear. So one feels quite comfortable, object is not clear, but that is neither shamatha nor vipassana. Because the shamatha and vipassana can only appear with a clear object, not with a non-clear object. So people sit for 1 hour, even 2 hours, sit quite comfortably, and they do it for years, but don't get any further. Because they do not study, don't become very familiar with these stages of shamatha, stages of vipassana, and don't understand clearly. The shamatha vipassana can only happen with a clear object, not with a blur object. So the most important task of the meditator is to make the differentiated or non-differentiated object clear. If he doesn't do so, he cannot advance. So, when the meditator understands this very clearly, he fights against this tendency of mind thinking. He has removed already the gross states of excitement, but the mind, he has not removed the tendency of the mind to thinking. Even so, it does not leave. Still, he has mindfulness, he does not leave the meditation object, but the object is not clear. So, the next stage is called Dhammayati. Dhammayati means subdue. Here starts the power of awareness starts to crystallize. You subdue this tendency of the mind to think, to make the object very clear. Then you can enter into the sixth stage, which is called Shamayati, Jijin, a peace. In this stage already the mind gets real balance and the object becomes clear. So when you have reached this stage, actually, then you have come into the second very important victory in your path towards perfect balance of the mind. You will be able to see very clearly even the subtle tendencies of the mind to thinking and to excitement, because the object of meditation becomes very clear. So at that stage, you may cultivate also, if you work on breath, a very clear shamatha nimitta. In order to enter the dhyana, you need a shamatha nimitta, the mental object, the mental image that you use for absorption. At this stage, this mental image may become quite clear. If you work on breath, then you will find some color at the place where you are observing the touch of the in-breath and out-breath, be it the place around the nostrils or be it the whole body. You will feel some luminous sensation. At first it will not be very clear, it will be rather misty, but many meditators, they start to grasp at it, then it will disappear, they get disappointed, then they go to the lower stages of shamatha again. But if you don't get influenced by these signs of better meditation, this mental image, the shamatha image that you need to enter the spheres of subtle perception, they will start to crystallize and become clear. So if you want to enter the dhyana, it may be possible, but not for a long time. The tendency of thinking and excitement will still not be suppressed, not be transcended. But you may experience something of the absorption of the mind into the mental object. In the Buddhist tradition, the cosmology is related to these states of mind. Each and every the sphere of heaven has 3 layers according to the mastery of the dhyana. When your mastery of the dhyana is deficient, then you will be born, if you die in this state of mind, you will be born in the lower stage. If it is medium, you will be born in the middle stage. If it is perfected, you will be born in the higher stage. So you can become Maha Brahma. But we have explained in this tradition, its emphasis is not so much on attaining the dhyana, but attaining the perfect balance of the mind, perfect equanimity. With this perfect balance of the mind, what is the practice of the bodhisattva? He, rather than quickly abandoning the defilements, he learns from the defilements. He does not want to completely abandon the defilements. If he does it, it's very difficult to benefit sentient beings. So he makes the defilements less and less troublesome and continues to learn from them how to benefit the beings and benefit himself, not differentiating between himself and others. And how does he achieve it? Bodhicitta, contemplating others like being his mothers in previous life, exchanging oneself with others. These are all the means also for working on consequently, rather than entering the dhyanas, working for the perfectly balanced mind, with which you can face any situations, not avoiding even hell. The bodhisattva, very difficult to understand. Bodhisattva learns even from the hell, but when he goes to hell, he won't stay long because of this balance of the mind. So we have reached the sixth stage, and in this sixth stage, the fluctuations of the mind become very minimum. So this is real appeasement. That's why shamayati chichin. But still, these fluctuations are there, but very, very minute. So one can discover them as soon as they arise. So in this conditioning, one can then prepare for training for one-pointedness of the mind. And in order to do that, one has to get into this state of very, very minute fluctuations. And how to attain the one-pointedness of the mind, we will explain tomorrow. Now let us go to the questions. Now we have only 3 questions. So let us go through them. One more. Oh, it is even typed. Could you explain in detail the method or methods that we can use when the mind is thinking? Very important to understand. We are always trying to emphasize, in order to work efficiently with the deficiencies in our mind, and also we are learning Qigong even in our bodies, then we have to understand very clearly the reasons of these deficiencies, reasons of these distortions. If we see very clearly the reasons of these different distortions we have, then we can effectively work on trying to remove them and make this a habit. Because these deficiencies, they are also our habits. Habits of the mind related to the habits of the body also. So when we want to fight effectively against this tendency of the mind to thinking, then we have to understand the cause of thinking, cause of the mind thinking. Then we can apply the suitable antidote. Now, we have learned that the antidote to the mind thinking is will, cetana. But actually the will never comes alone. What is will? Will is, in Buddhist psychology, will is that which drives the mind to the object. According to Buddhist psychology, there are 2 forces which drive the mind to the object, which bring the mind to the object. One is will, and one is called the applied thought, or applied attention. Vitarka, Xun. In Chinese they translate Xun, which means investigation, searching. Xun means literally searching. We have to search for the object. When we search for the object, the mind will go to the object. If we don't search for the object, the mind will not go for the object. So search means to apply. According to Buddhist philosophy, psychology, this force of searching for the object is also responsible for the speech. It is also called, this applied thought or applied attention, is also called the vachi sankhara. It is the formation of the speech. Because we search for the object, we name the object. And these two forces, the will and the searching for the object or application of the mind to the object or application of attention to the object, they are responsible for driving our mind to the object. They are compared to the two oars which are pulling the mind towards the object. And in order to be pulled towards the object, we have mentioned yesterday, we need what? We need attention. And attention is compared to the rudder, which gives direction. So when the mind has direction, when it pays attention to the object, the will and the applied thought will draw it like oars to the object. Then we can keep the mind on the object. If these forces are not there, then the mind will be not kept on the object. So this force of will and especially of applied thought are crucial for learning the shamatha and vipassana. You have to literally draw your mind to the object consequently all the time, so as to stabilize the mind on the object. Otherwise the mind will go elsewhere. So what is the opposite of thinking mind? The opposite of the thinking mind is precisely this vitarka, this applied thought, search for the object, investigation of the object. When you investigate the object, the mind will not think. It is thinking because this power of drawing the mind to the object becomes weak. So the mind loses its stability and it cannot penetrate the object. Because it cannot penetrate the object is not clear. And because the object is not clear, the mind will think. If the object is clear, the mind will not think. And to make the object clear, you have to draw the mind to it, you have to investigate it, you have to search for it. So this vitarka has a very wide scope of meaning. It comes from the Sanskrit root u, which actually means like contemplation. Investigation. Contemplation is investigation. So we have to then investigate the object, then the object becomes clear. Now, the Visuddhimagga explains that in order to get rid of the thinking tendency of the mind, we have to investigate those factors of enlightenment, those causes of enlightenment connected with wisdom, and which are there. The Dharma Pravichaya, Dhamma Vichaya, which means investigation of the Dharma. According to Buddhism, it is this investigation of the Dharma which makes our mind pure. It is wisdom. Vasubandhu says in Abhidharma Kosha, Dharma pravichaya antarena nasti upaya kleshana vishodhihe. There is no other skillful means for purifying the mind of defilements except this Dharma Pravichaya, except this investigation of the Dharma. Very important to understand. And without the investigation of the Dharma is actually this vitarka, this applied thought, applied attention. They are synonyms. So you have to apply your mind either to the non-differentiated image of the object or to the differentiated image of the object to make the object clear. And without a clear object, no meditation. And how you make the mind clear? By gladdening the mind. Another factor of enlightenment connected with wisdom is priti, piti, the joy, see. We have to gladden the mind. Why the mind is thinking? It is bored. It has no happiness in. So you have to gladden it. You have to think of those things that make the mind happy, that make the religious mind happy. Of course. That's why Vasubandhu defines, we have said, the faith as a religious love. So you have Zfa, you have Si, and what comes next? Gladden the mind. And the Virya, effort. You have to, if the mind is thinking, it means it is very weak. So you have to bring the effort in. And what is effort? According to Buddhist psychology, effort is supporting the mind. If you don't support the mind, it will weaken and sink. So when these three are clear, when the mind is happy mind, when the mind is well supported by energy, virya is sometimes translated as energy, chin chin. And when the mind search for the object, investigate the object, consequently brings the mind to the object, then no place for thinking. Bye-bye thinking. Is there any difference between the understanding of the concept in the southern tradition and northern tradition? Of concept. The concept of the thinking, I guess. Of course, it is the same. Thinking is another word for sloth and torpor. According to the southern tradition, a concept does not have the characteristics of... Oh, that is some other question. Is there any difference between the understanding of concept in general? So concept means kainyen, pragyapti, panyati. So the question is there any different interpretation of concept in southern and northern tradition? According to the southern tradition, a concept does not have the characteristics of impermanence and thus cannot be the object of vipassana. It is partly true. It is partly true. Not exactly. However, especially in this Abhidharma school, in which in a way I have been trained, it is emphasized that the object of vipassana is the ultimate reality. And the ultimate reality, as the students of Southern Buddhism should know, actually there are four ultimate realities. The form, the rupa, then the mind, the chitta, then the mental factors, cetasikas, and the nirvana. In Northern Buddhism, you have five: the viprayukta samskara, the shin pushyang yin xing, the formations not connected, not joined with the mind, not connected with the mind. In Southern Buddhism, they come under rupa, like impermanence. Without the impermanence, we cannot explain. But what is impermanence? How to classify it? Big problem. So, why not make it the formation which is not connected with the mind? However, according to your explanations, the Yogacara tradition holds that all objects are mental objects, that is, concepts of our mind. Yes, of course, we have explained all that. It is all based on the alaya. Dependent origination is our alaya. Then how can we observe the mental images that are concepts to get insight into impermanence? The alaya is impermanence. Very easy. Is a pure mental object that does not have the sense objects as a base to begin with the same as mental object that becomes prominent after, say, the bodily consciousness goes into background. The mental object has the sense objects at the base. This is misunderstanding. It has this, first you have to grasp the object with the senses, like you have to know the heat and coolness at the touching place of the breath, called anapana nimitta. You feel the vibrations there, then you concentrate on it, and it becomes a mental object. And then these qualities go into background. They are not the same, as the Yogacara explains, as what you have grasped with the senses, but they are also not to be separated from what you have experienced by the senses, because ultimately the mind is one. This is very important to understand. Is a pure mental object that does not have the sense object as a base to begin with, the same as mental object that becomes prominent after saying. Yes, we have explained that. When the concentration goes into the foreground, naturally the five senses go into the background. When the five senses go into the background, when the five senses go into the foreground, that is monkey mind. What makes the five senses stable? It is the mental consciousness. The five senses are based in mental consciousness. And they can be only made stable by mental consciousness. Because they are, Yogacara explained, they are by their very nature. They are the distracted minds. Very important to understand. This is also the idea of yoga, same. No wonder Yogacara is called Yogacara. The same idea in yoga. The five senses are naturally the states of distraction. Only the mental sense has the ability to develop concentration and wisdom. It is the mind which binds us, and it is the mind which liberates us, not the senses, not the five senses. Okay, so that much for now. We will continue in the afternoon after satisfying the form. We have to satisfy the form, then we can work effectively on the formless. So let us have a lunch. This here, the food is like American dream. So very easy to satisfy the form, but we should satisfy it with balanced mind. This is very important. Even American dream we should experience with a balanced mind. Om Itobo.